Hi, I'm Christina Heidick with PTO Answers, and today I want to talk to you all about how to whip your PTO into shape, even if you feel like things are a hot mess, even if you think like things are out of control and that it's an impossible task to get everything in order. That's what I kind of want to talk about today. So, first, I think there's just, again, this year is so funky and things are so off, and it's not what we are normally used to dealing with. We have events that we can't have events really. We have an economic environment that makes fundraising pretty difficult. We have parents that are feeling pretty uninspired to get involved because, after all, what does it matter anyway if their kid isn't going to even be in school, or if there can't be after school programs? Like, you might be feeling like, what is the point? Well, even though this year kind of sucks, I think that's pretty fair to say. I just told my son that last night when I told him he couldn't go to something that someone had invited him to. I was like, I'm sorry, I just don't see how that's gonna work and everything. And he understood, but he was a little upset. But like, even though it sucks this year, this is a temporary situation that we're all finding ourselves dealing with. It's temporary. So even though it's been going on for months now, and it seems kind of like, when is this going to end? We're all just waiting. Eventually it will end. And so I think you have a decision to make right now, whether you are going to be, like, when we get past all this, are you going to be in the same place that you are today? Or are you going to have made like some really smart decisions that put your PTO in a position to be farther ahead? Like, that is possible. Like, it's both are possible, right? You could decide that, I'm really just going to phone this year in because it doesn't really matter because my kids aren't getting anything out of it. The other kids aren't really getting anything out of it. And it just seems like more of a hassle than it's worth. Well, that might be true for some things, but I know for certain that's not true across the board for the entire year, and that there are things that you can definitely be doing right now that will really set your group up for success, like back when we get into normal times. Easy things that you ought to have been doing anyway, but didn't really have time to do. So I just want to encourage you not just to just feel like you just have to sit and, twiddle your thumbs because there's nothing else that you could possibly be doing right now. Like, inside the PTO Superstar group, I've been having like these little daily prompts, and I've been saying like, what do you have to get done this week? Or what's the one thing you have to do this week? And there's a couple people that keep posting like, nothing. Can't have programs, can't get in school, so there's nothing to do. Well, that is one way to look at it. I think that is the like poor pitiful me kind of way to look at it. But I would like encourage you to start doing some of the things that you need to do to get your group in shape for when normal times return. Because I'm gonna be all sunny and cheery about this right now, but I do think normal times are kind of just around the corner, not in a matter of days or weeks. Probably we're looking at some months, but it'll be here before we know it, and then this can all be a miserable nightmare that we just try and forget. So the first thing you need to do to kind of get your group into shape is to quit making it up as you go along. That I hate just to make things up as I go along. I just always feel like I'm really out of control, and in retrospect, I always look back and go, ugh. If I'd only taken some time to plan that out, I can see how much smoother it would have gone. I can see how much less stressed I would have been. I can see how others would have been more apt to jump in and help me do whatever I was trying to do if I had had a plan and if I had been able to clearly communicate that plan. But I think too often PTO leaders and volunteers are thrown into these situations where it's kind of like, make it work. But it doesn't always work out just fine because we're not equipped with the tools and the resources that we need, right? So, and part of the thing is like, none of this is new. PTAs and PTOs have been around for decades. So there are systems out there that others are using that are working, and there are solutions to, like, if you don't have the creativity or you don't feel confident enough that you can create a system for your group, then there are like templates out there that you can follow, you know, they're available in my shop. But I don't want you to get like overwhelmed thinking like you're new explorers and everything is brand new and no one's ever gone through this before. No, like hundreds and thousands of volunteers have gone through very similar things that you're going through. There is, I can't even think of an example of something that would be something brand new that no one's ever had to deal with. You might just not have been like hip to the fact that they have dealt with it and you haven't been keen on their solution. And that's one of the reasons why I always say we need to come together in community, why I always encourage people to join the PTA, PTO Superstar Leader Group, because it's a great place to feel, or great place to realize that you're not alone and that other people don't have pretty magazine-worthy groups. Like, I gotta be real honest with you, my PTAs are not magazine-worthy. We got issues. Everybody has issues. Everybody has room for improvement. But instead of taking that as like a negative thing, like, oh God, we have a lot to improve on, you can look at it like, oh my gosh, what opportunities? Because you know the existing issues, and then you chances are you know what you need to do to improve it, or you know where your group is lacking, right? So, and you know, systems are always the way to get there, in my belief, just because I just think it's so much easier to just execute rather than figure out and execute. And what's like the worst is when you're trying to figure out and execute at the same time. Like, I think that's always where I personally get into trouble, either professionally or in my, you know, PTA, PTO volunteer work. Like, always, it's so much better when I already know what's up and that I can just like, I know what step comes next, and maybe not the entire like plan, but like a couple steps so you know where you're going. And so what kind of systems am I talking about, right? So they could be like big and little systems. It could be anytime you are having trouble, look to see if you have an existing system there or not. So is an example of this would be, let's just talk about treasurers for a second, because they are their job responsibilities and the time that's involved with doing everything that they have to do can drastically be reduced by a good system or two, okay? So some of the systems that I'm talking about for treasurers would be, let's say, I always use like chasing down receipts, because I've had, you know, experience in this where a treasurer was super frustrated because somebody took the debit card, which that's a whole nother topic for another day, whether or not you should have a debit card. They took the debit card and didn't come back with the receipts. Like, just so we had no way of knowing as a group whether she was embezzling money by going and spending things, saying that it was PTO related, but really it was food for her family or what. Now, as it turned out, it was not food for her family, but you know, we had to implement some rules about you don't take the debit card unless you promise to bring back a receipt, and there's like a one strike and you're out kind of situation. Another kind of situation, and so that would just be like a clear policy. So that's the system for that. The other systems that treasurers really enjoy, how it like cuts down on their time, is something like my treasurer's planner, and that gives you like a whole kit that you can print out to set up an organized binder. So it gives you the pretty cover, which, oh, who doesn't love a pretty cover? And then nice divider pages so that you have a place for everything. And then also pre-done forms for you so that if someone says, hey, I need a cash startup, like I need somebody to start up for, pick your event. Maybe it's concessions, right? You always have to have change for concessions. And so instead of the treasurer having to go back and forth with that volunteer and saying exactly how much do you need and what denominations and when do you need it and all that kind of stuff, she'd just have a form that say, here, fill this form out. And the form like has all the prompts on there to give all, so it just eliminates that back and forth because it's all in one place, right? So that's another kind of system. For, let's say, membership. If you were approaching membership each year by just sending out one flyer and you're calling it a day, I guarantee your membership numbers look pretty crappy. Like, you probably don't have that many involved people because parents are going to ignore that first flyer, or especially if that's the only flyer, they're for sure going to ignore that puppy. So what you need to do instead is have a system where you have everything timed to where the first information goes out on this day, and then so many days later you have an additional flyer with additional perks that you're alerting everybody to, and then after that you need to have make sure you have tables out at open house, that kind of stuff. So when you have it laid out like that, you can see opportunities to bolster your system or bolster your whole plan to get additional members. And you can always also, align that with how many members you are getting and make tweaks as you go along. If you don't have that overarching kind of plan of attack ahead of time and you just make it up as you go along, you're going to miss things and it just won't be as successful. So then the last thing I want to talk to you about, and this is a huge problem for all groups. I think there's probably this many. I can fill up my pinky finger about how many groups actually do this the right way, and that is combating brain drain. How many of you in groups have a few volunteers that seem to know everything, but then other people are always like, oh, I don't know, go ask Nancy, go ask Stephanie. Like, we're really bad at documenting what we know in a way that can be passed from officer to officer, so that what happens is people, experienced volunteers, are moving on from the group. Either they don't have room in their life or don't have time in their life to volunteer anymore, or their child has left that school to move on to the next school. They're taking all of that like institutional knowledge and all of that experience, and it's trapped up here, and they've never taken the time to like transfer all the goodness that's up here to paper. And what ends up happening is that information just moves right along with Nancy or Stephanie to the next school, and your school now has a big hole to make up because Nancy or Stephanie isn't there to answer those questions. And so people have to come up, either they have to recreate the whole process or reinvent the process, or just gain that knowledge again. And that takes time, and that puts y'all like behind. And that's what's so frustrating about being a leader a lot of times, is that it can take over your life. I remember when I first started out as president, and I wasn't working, to be honest. I was just at home, because when my oldest started school, my youngest was, I think, maybe just a year. Like, he was a little guy. And so I was home with him because we had the luxury to do that. And quite honestly, I did not want to go back to my litigation job. Before this, I worked for a private firm, small little boutique litigation firm. Did not want to go back to the 70-hour-a-week commitment. I would never see my children, but I digress. But when I first started as a PTA volunteer, and remember, if you remember my story, I got involved right away when my son started kindergarten, but then I signed up because I have like a serious problem with this. I signed up to be president, or agreed to be president, that following April. So I started off my first year as president technically as a kindergarten mom, right? I knew nothing about the school, and that was a really scary place to start. And so as a result, I didn't want to look like a fool, because I didn't know these people. I didn't know who my allies were. I didn't know who the people that I needed to tread a little more carefully around. I didn't know any of that. And so I was spending hours and hours and hours a week on this volunteer position. Like, that's just like bananas. And I think that can be such a huge turnoff to getting new volunteers. And so having that experience is really why I have developed all of the different resources that I've developed, because it's either been an issue for me directly, or it's been an issue for one of my volunteer friends, or it's been an issue for somebody in the PTA, PTO Superstar Leader group. To be quite honest, like, if I keep seeing the same issues come up, I'm a helper. I want to help people. So I have created these resources. So if you haven't tuned into one of my videos this week, then you might not be aware that the complete organizing and planning collection, which is the ginormous bundle of like all of my resources, that's on sale only through the end of this month at like midnight Eastern time for 34% off. So you can snag the special sale price by entering treat at checkout. But like I said, like I just didn't make these just so I could sell things to you guys. No, I want to help you. I want you to feel confident. Like now, a decade later, I'm a really confident leader, and I've turned into the leader that everybody kind of calls and says, hey, do you know how to do this? Like I've never been treasurer because I really stink at math. Like I cannot add like simple numbers. I screwed up. Don't know what's wrong with me. So I had someone from a different school. She emailed me yesterday and she's like, my 990 keeps getting rejected. Can you help? And I was like, oh, girl, I've never been treasurer and I don't know how to do that, but I can hook you up with my husband, who's a former treasurer. He's done it at 2 different schools. Because again, whenever I needed some help, I would just make him be treasurer. And he did it because he loves me. But that's how we became a little PTO power couple here. So anyway, I wanted to kind of take all of the information that I had and transfer it in these different resources. And that's how like the membership master plan came about. And certainly the 7 steps to boost parent involvement. Because I will admit that my groups are not don't consistently have high involvement and engagement. But the times that I've been in charge of membership and that I've really tried to implement these strategies, they do work. So I kind of just wanted to give other people some tools. So that's how each of these different resources that are in the complete collection came about. So of course, I always talk about my favorite, which is the President's Success Kit, because I am a planning junkie. I'm a list making junkie. I like to see the whole plan, because when you have a plan, then you can follow it, right? If you don't have a plan, what the heck are you doing? I just don't know how to live life like that. So that's my favorite one, because it gives you everything you need all in one nice big packet. And you can print out as many copies as you need. And a lot of the resources are meant to be shared with other volunteers and leaders in your group. So even though it's called the President's Success Kit, the resources are meant to help your entire group. But I figured that usually the presidents are most feeling the pain of disorganization and not having their group together, and that they need to have resources right at their fingertips to share with other people to make their lives easier. So I just talked about tracking and documenting your knowledge, that you don't have that brain drain that happens like all the time with PTAs and PTOs. And so there are planning and they're like evaluation sheets. Maybe I need to come up with like a fancier title, because I think that they're just called like officer evaluation forms. But the prompts that are in those forms will kind of nudge people to write down all that information that would normally they would just take with them when they left the school, and that your PTO would be without. But it gets them to kind of write down all that information and download it onto paper so that it can be used, because if they're not writing it down, it's totally going to be lost. So whenever I am president at a PTA, I start off the year by giving all of my officers like the evaluation forms. And I say, I want these back at the end of the year. And then at the end of the year, I say, hey, I need those forms back. And the nice thing is that it's not just how to do your job, but it's like what worked and what didn't, and some other really good probing questions in there that will really get to the heart of the matter. And that I always use them because I fill them out for every committee that I do, because again, I'm a nerd like that. So I just passed along the fundraising binder to the fundraising chair at the junior high where I'm president. There was no fundraising chair at this PTA last year, and so the president had the binder that I had put together, and so I was flipping through it before I gave it to the new fundraising chair, and I was like, oh look, I filled out those forms, the evaluation forms, and I did some like heavy duty like self-criticism there, or self-critique. It wasn't criticism, it was a critique. I was just super honest with what I didn't do so well, and maybe an opportunity for future leaders to kind of improve on what I had done and realized the pitfalls that I fell into so that they could avoid them. Because the whole point of being a PTO leader is not to be a martyr, is not to dedicate your entire life to this, because you're going to get tired. Your spouses are going to get tired of you complaining. Your spouses are going to get tired of a messy house. You're going to get messy. You're going to get tired of a messy house. And so if you could avoid all of that and really enjoy the time that you were a leader by using these resources, then why not? Like, I just think that it's just, it just is smart. It's really a very smart investment. And I probably don't explain it well enough to have everybody understand the true value in the bundle. One thing that I don't really talk about a whole lot is the room parent kit that's included. And this is really good for younger PTAs. I don't mean the age range of the people that are involved, but I mean like school. So like this is probably good for K to 6, K to 5. People or schools that have room parent programs. Because what I recognized in elementary school for my kids was that there were 2 different kinds of volunteers. There were the PTO and PTA people who came to the meetings, would sign up for events to volunteer, no problem. And then there was a whole separate group of parents that didn't want anything to do with the PTA or PTO, but they wanted to be in the classrooms volunteering. They wanted to be helping out and they wanted to be giving back. But somehow the stigma or the, I don't know, what they were just, all these preconceived notions that they had about the PTO or PTO from the school was stopping them from getting involved. And so inside the complete organizing and planning collection, there is a whole kit that will help you transform the program for getting classroom volunteers and turn them into PTO volunteers. And even if they don't really quite notice it. So technically they don't have to come to meetings, but you can say, hey, you want to be a classroom mom, then you need to communicate on a regular basis with all the parents, and we're going to send you the information and you're going to go ahead and send it out. Like that's one of your responsibilities in addition to planning those fun class parties, right? So that's what's so fun about the little kids, especially Halloween, when they're all dressed up and look so cute, and we don't get that this year. Boo. But next year, I bet it'll be back next year. So really, those are the 3 main ways that I think you can get your crap together as a PTO, and those are the 3 main pitfalls. So again, if you're just joining me kind of late, I'll just go ahead and sum it up. It's quit making things up as you go along. Like, get a plan, make a plan, get my plan, whatever, get a plan and start using it. Second is to implement some systems and like develop forms so that you're not just on that hamster wheel of sitting in front of your computer and creating a sign-up sheet for this and a sign-up sheet for this and a tracking information or tracking sheet for this. And the third thing is that you want to track and document the knowledge from your leaders so that you don't experience brain drain. So, and like I said, all of the resources that are in the complete collection are really designed to combat those 3 issues, because you get the advice and the guidance of me. I've been there and I've done that. But you also get instant systems. There's printable forms, printable systems to follow, flyer templates, like anything I think you need is in there. And then even if there's something that you don't need, you can request it, and chances are I'll make it for you and put it in the bundle. And you especially get like all of those prompts to get the knowledge out of people's brains. And collectively, what the complete collection does is just makes it easier for you to live as a PTO leader and not lose your mind, but it also makes it easier to get new people involved because they're not walking into a hot mess. They're going to be walking into a group that has systems set up. And so really it's going to be just much more attractive for them to get involved when things are together rather than a group that is disorganized and dysfunctional and doesn't have it together. So I hope this has been super helpful for you and motivating so that you can get your stuff together this year so that you can have a great next year. Because I know that this is a pretty disappointing year for everybody, and that we're not able to do the things that we want to do, but we can plan now, get our stuff together now, so that next school year, we will be able to do all that fun stuff that we so wanted to do. So that wraps up for today, everything I wanted to talk about. So I will be back with you real soon with another topic that will help you become a stronger leader, and I hope you will join me for it. If you haven't already, go ahead and give this page or channel a like or subscribe, whatever works for wherever you're watching, and I will catch you next time. So until then, take care. Bye-bye.